Welcome to the deep dive. We've pulled together some really fascinating source material today. It digs into a question I think we've all probably wondered about.
Yeah.
What makes some people just kind of stand out?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the ones who seem to handle challenges so smoothly, build these incredible careers, and honestly just feel pretty irreplaceable.
Yeah, and our sources for this deep dive, they actually give them a name. They call them unicorns.
Unicorns, okay?
And what makes this really compelling, I think, is that this definition, this idea of a unicorn, it isn't just, guesswork or theory.
Right.
It's based on some serious data. We're talking 15 years, and get this, over 30,000 interviews, top caliber interviews conducted by an executive search firm.
Wow. 30,000.
Yeah. So it's really about the patterns they saw in these high performers, not just, single stories.
That kind of solid data feels incredibly relevant right now, doesn't it? I mean, we're living through this massive shift.
Sure.
AI, automation, it's all accelerating like crazy. Just think, there are predictions that whole industries could be almost fully automated in, 10 years?
It's kind of mind-blowing. And we already saw it, right? Like 42% of the job losses during the pandemic didn't come back. And Bloomberg's estimating 120 million jobs globally are shifting because of AI.
Exactly. So that landscape, it totally changes where human value really lies. Because as machines take over more of the predictable stuff, the process-driven tasks.
Yeah, the value shifts. It shifts to the skills machines can't do.
Which really boils down to those uniquely human things, right? What we usually call soft skills.
That's it.
Okay, so think of this deep dive as your shortcut. It's kind of a guide to understanding and maybe even cultivating those essential human skills that the data says make people not just successful, but, irreplaceable.
Yeah, we're going to unpack the core habits that this research identified, figure out why they matter so much right now.
And crucially, explore how you, listening right now, can actually develop them. So let's dig in.
Okay, let's kick off with the first trait the sources really focus on, the fast.
The fast. Okay, sounds like someone always rushing around. Is that the basic idea?
Not necessarily frantic, no. It's more about being responsive, acting decisively, understanding that, we live in an on-demand world and speed often wins. And that data from those 30,000 interviews, it makes a really strong case that being fast isn't about looking over-eager. It's actually about grabbing opportunities.
Okay, so how does that actually show up, in the real world, say in hiring?
Oh, it's a huge predictor. Hiring managers, they notice the fast almost immediately.
Really?
Yeah. They're the candidates who reply quickly, they get their application stuff in on time, they're generally, proactive.
Right.
And this often means they get the interview faster, they move through the process more smoothly, and yeah, it definitely boosts their chances of getting the offer. The sources actually found, the typical response time from someone they didn't know was over 2 days. Even people they did know often took a full business day, the really fast ones. They stood out.
The source material has some great examples, like Blake McCoskey, the founder of Tom's Shoes.
Oh, yeah, him.
His whole career path, it seems like it was fueled by this. From a laundry service to media, even being on The Amazing Race before Tom's, just boom, 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 responding fast to opportunity.
Always moving, yeah. And Lin-Manuel Miranda is another one they mentioned.
Right. Hamilton. Yeah.
Or even how quickly he acted after Hurricane Maria. He just embodies that decisive speed. Doesn't seem like he gets stuck overthinking things.
I remember reading that anecdote about the author using a text test, sending a text after hours just to see how fast candidates responded.
Yeah. He mentioned most texts get opened in 3 minutes anyway, but just the willingness to engage quickly, even briefly, it said a lot.
Though he did joke that telling everyone the secret might ruin the test now.
True, but it points to this fundamental readiness. So, okay, how do you actually cultivate this if you're not naturally super speedy?
Yeah, what's the advice?
Well, part of it is about access, just making sure opportunities can actually reach you. Not missing messages, maybe using autoresponders if you need to.
And I guess also getting over that fear. The fear of making a quick decision and it being wrong, or just getting stuck in analysis paralysis?
Absolutely. The sources talk about using a simple filter, ask yourself, does this thing get me closer to my goals? Does my whole brain agree, or is there some gut feeling saying no? And is it actually worth the resources, the time, the energy, the money?
So having a quick checklist almost.
Kind of, yeah. A quick framework helps you decide fast, even if the answer is no. It's not about saying yes to everything, it's about deciding quickly.
That feels like something you can learn. like building a muscle.
Totally. It is. The key takeaway here seems to be that, while our instinct might be to play it cool or think things over forever, especially now with everything moving so fast, being fast, being responsive and decisive, it's a really significant advantage. It signals you're someone who actually gets things done.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
So let's shift gears a bit from how quickly you respond to how you actually show up. The next trait is the authentic.
Ah, the authentic. Yeah. These are the people who really prioritize telling the truth, being genuinely themselves.
Okay.
And this is key, showing a willingness to be vulnerable, especially about their mistakes.
Vulnerability. That feels really connected to trust, doesn't it? Which, our brains are basically hardwired to look for.
Exactly. The sources really hammer this home. Our brains crave authenticity because it's how we build trust and confidence. And you see this playing out everywhere now.
Like how?
Well, think about the rise of user-generated content, right?
Yeah.
It often feels more trustworthy than slick, polished ads.
Totally.
Or how during the pandemic, those super perfect curated images started feeling kind of off, less relevant.
Yeah.
And it's just our instinct now to check real person reviews before we buy anything. We want the real story.
And brands are catching on too, aren't they? Trying to find a more genuine voice on social media or being really open about their company values. It sort of breaks down that corporate wall.
It does. And on a personal level, it builds incredibly strong relationships. When you're basically the same person in all situations, like Leanne B. said in the sources, people know where they stand. It creates that psychological safety, which is just essential for teams to really perform well.
Right.
And as Thomas S. pointed out, authenticity draws the right people to you. And just as importantly, it signals clearly to others, hey, maybe we're not a good fit, which saves everyone time and energy.
The examples in the source material here are really powerful. Like Warren Buffett, he's often seen as this icon of integrity, right?
Well,
and part of his success seems built on this reputation for strict authenticity and really owning his mistakes when they happened. That famous quote, takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it.
That quote says it all. And Jamie Kern-Lima, the founder of IT Cosmetics, her story is amazing.
Yeah, tell us about that.
She actually showed her own rosacea-prone skin, like live on QVC, no makeup covering it up.
Wow, that takes guts.
Totally. But it wasn't just authentic. It created this moment of intense connection. Viewers saw her vulnerability and thought, she's just like me. And that authenticity, it fueled massive sales and incredible loyalty.
That's powerful. I also love the little story about the witness, Amos, his advice about telling the truth, but learning when and how much to tell. The quote was something like, always tell the truth, just don't always be a telling it.
That's perfect. It's like authenticity balanced with wisdom. It's not about just blurting everything out unfiltered. It's about being fundamentally truthful in a way that actually serves the situation. And that ties into the old mentor's advice, too. People remember you for how you handled your failures, not just the wins.
And those other stories, the really personal ones, like the guy John, confessing about looking at inappropriate websites and going through intense counseling, even a polygraph with his girlfriend there.
Yeah, the author said it was the most authentic answer he'd ever heard.
Or Anna, admitting she got fired for making bad decisions. It's shocking, but it makes them unforgettable because it's so real.
It absolutely does. It signals real courage and a commitment to actually growing. So, okay, how do you cultivate this? Especially when the world often pushes you to put up this perfect front.
Yeah, what's the path?
Well, it starts with embracing that Amos lesson, right? Practicing telling the truth, but with wisdom.
And being honest about failures.
Yeah.
Not wallowing, but acknowledging your part. The sources really stress analyzing why things went wrong so you actually learn.
Right. Mistakes you make and correct when the stakes are low.
Yeah.
They stop you from making huge errors later when things really matter.
Makes sense.
And fundamentally, it just comes down to being yourself. Like the source mentions when talking about likability, if your connection comes from your true self, it's authentic. If it's just trying to please people, it's not.
So ditch the mask.
Basically, trust that your genuine self, flaws and everything, is actually your greatest asset.
It sounds like being authentic isn't about achieving perfection, but about being real. And weirdly, that makes you more trustworthy and confident.
Exactly. It builds bridges, creates those deep connections, and it actually allows for real growth because you're not trying to hide from your own learning opportunities.
Okay, so moving from that internal state, being authentic, to how you navigate the, constantly changing world outside. That brings us to the third trait, The agile.
The agile. Yeah, these are the folks who adapt quickly and easily to change. They can pivot, they innovate, they don't get totally stuck when the plan goes sideways.
And let's face it, in a world being constantly reshaped by tech and everything else, unpredictability feels like the only thing we can predict.
Precisely. Agility is basically survival. We saw this so clearly during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
A third of small businesses didn't make it. But many that did survive, they were led by agile people who quickly shifted their models, found new ways. The sources really emphasize that agile businesses come from agile individuals who are actually allowed to be agile.
Like that example of the author's firm, Vanderbloemen, launching that scale-back service, Vanderbloemen Teams, when their main business slowed down during COVID.
Exactly. They didn't just freeze up. They found a new path forward.
That's agility.
That's it in action. It's not getting frustrated when things change, but accepting, okay, this is the new reality. Now what's the best way forward from here? Jonathan H. in the sources totally nailed it. The quicker you realize the fact of the new reality, the more quickly you can move forward.
Ursula Burns, the former Xerox CEO, she's a great example of someone who seemed to embrace this her whole career. Started as a chemical engineer, but was agile enough to keep pivoting into management roles she didn't originally plan for, eventually leading this massive company.
And Lizzo. Think about Lizzo.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, she's a classically trained flutist, obviously physically agile as a performer.
Right.
But also agile in her art. Remember when she immediately rewrote that song lyric after getting feedback that it was ableist?
Oh, right. I do remember that.
She didn't dig in her heels. She listened, adapted, changed it. That's agility.
It makes me think about the author's point, learning agility from his toddler daughter being like a cute pretzel.
Yeah.
He notes that our brains, our bodies, they naturally become less agile as we get older unless we actively work on it. Learning new things gets harder.
Which really highlights that agility isn't just passive. It needs conscious effort, cultivation.
So how do you do that? What do the sources suggest?
A few things. One is just simple acceptance. Embracing that change happens and, building that bridge and getting over it, as they say.
And staying humble, maybe? Not getting too attached to your own ideas so you can actually see a better way when things change.
Absolutely. Nick D points out that assuming there's always a better way keeps you open, keeps you learning.
You can actively test and build it too, right?
Yeah.
Like asking yourself those questions from the source.
Yeah, like, what new skill are you learning? What new hobby have you picked up? What period of history are you digging into? These things stretch your brain, expose you to different ways of thinking.
Or like that CCO who was supposed to go to France. The trip got canceled.
Yeah.
And she decided to learn French instead.
Mm.
She found a new route to engage with the original goal, even though the plan fell apart.
Exactly. Agility isn't about loving chaos. It's about navigating it effectively without losing your momentum. The big insight here is that resisting change, doing things the way we've always done them, that's just toxic.
Deadly.
Agility keeps you alive, keeps you vibrant. It thrives on diversity, new ideas, fresh experiences.
Okay, so from adapting to change, let's talk about actively tackling the challenges that come up. The fourth trait, the solver.
The solver. Yeah, this is someone who, when they hit a problem, their immediate reaction is to focus on finding solutions. They just refuse to get stuck in that victim mentality.
These sound like the people you absolutely want, maybe need, on your team when the inevitable crisis hits.
Oh, totally irreplaceable. In those moments of panic or confusion, solvers really stand out because they're not just saying, oh no, look at this problem. They're asking, okay, how can we fix this?
Right.
And hiring managers apparently love them because the data shows most people just bring problems to the table, not potential solutions.
That's interesting. The sources also mentioned that millennials seem particularly good at group problem solving, which can really spark innovation.
Yeah, that collaborative approach. And there's a personal benefit too, Focusing on solutions is genuinely less stressful than just dwelling on the problems.
I could see that.
It frees up mental energy, gets things done faster. Plus, actually solving problems helps you learn, so you hopefully avoid making the same mistakes again later.
Kevin Plank, the Under Armour founder, he seems like a classic solver.
Definitely.
Saw a problem. Cotton shirts getting soaked and heavy during sports. Solution. Research. Synthetic fabrics. Then, had a sales problem. Solution. Take a risk on a big magazine ad. Problem, solution, problem, solution.
Exactly. And Jennifer Garner is another interesting example they used.
Oh, yeah.
Tackling that really complex challenge of co-parenting, right?
Yeah.
She actively projected this collaborative, unified image with her ex and his new wife. That's solving a relationship problem. And she also saw a problem with healthy baby food options. So she solved it by starting her own line and, importantly, making sure it was accessible through food stamps.
Wow. Solving on multiple fronts. The author also mentioned seeing solvers really shine during the pandemic with the whole shift to remote work and Zoom.
Right. While lots of people were understandably complaining about the disruption, the solvers were the ones popping up saying, okay, this is the deal now. What if we try doing it this way? Offering concrete ideas.
There's even a language clue, apparently. Solvers tend to use we more than I.
Yeah, the sources point that out, focusing on the collective effort toward the solution rather than just their own view of the problem. And yes, fun fact, Robert Matthew Van Winkle,
Vanilla Ice
himself, is quoted in the source identifying as a solver.
No way. Okay, so how do you get better at being a solver? It sounds like it starts with just a conscious shift in mindset.
It really does, adopting that principle. If I see a problem, I need to come up with a solution. The author mentioned an old mentor who had a rule. Never bring me a problem unless you also bring at least one potential solution.
You could apply that to yourself.
Exactly. And the solution doesn't have to be perfect or even totally feasible at first. Remember the example of suggesting going to the rodeo just to break the tension?
Yep.
Even if it's humorous, it exercises that creative problem-solving muscle. Dustinella emphasized just bringing something, anything, to the table.
It's also about knowing what actually needs solving, right?
Totally. John D. asks that critical question. Is this person just venting, or are they actually asking for help solving this?
Yeah.
Don't spin your wheels trying to fix something someone just needs to get off their chest. Apply that filter to your own worries, too.
And focus on we over I. That collective approach often unlocks solutions you'd miss on your own.
Yeah. The key takeaway seems to be complaining is just bad for you, mentally and in terms of your impact. Being a solver, that makes you incredibly valuable.
Okay, moving from tackling problems to being ready before they even hit. The fifth trait, the prepared.
The prepared. These are the people who really think things through beforehand. They maintain this state of readiness, both mentally and, practically.
This feels like one that should be obvious, but clearly, if it's a unicorn trait, it must be a differentiator.
Oh, it absolutely is. Preparation isn't just about being efficient, though it is that. It's really about earning trust and respect, especially when the stakes are high.
How so?
Well, the sources highlight how being prepared to address potential objections, not just pitch your idea, builds huge credibility. Steve R. noted it helps you actually win arguments or gain buy-in.
And it saves everyone a ton of time, too, doesn't it? Emily V. talks about the waste caused by unprepared people needing endless follow-ups.
Exactly. If you're prepared, things move faster, there's less confusion.
Fewer meetings.
And it's a massive confidence booster for yourself. Mark E. says maximum prep gives you greater confidence, even if you don't end up using every single thing you prepared.
Right, just knowing you have it.
Yeah. And Scott H. adds that simply looking and acting prepared makes a really strong positive impression. Hiring managers definitely prefer candidates who show they've done their homework over someone who seems kind of casual or like they're playing hard to get.
Eric Yuan, the Zoom founder, he's a perfect example of this.
How so?
He was prepared for that insane surge in demand during COVID because he'd already studied where competitors had failed. He designed Zoom specifically to be simple and user-friendly to avoid those exact pitfalls. Preparedness was baked into the product.
Wow, that's foresight. It's like the classic Scouts motto, right? Be prepared. Ready in mind and body. Thinking through potential scenarios beforehand.
And that story about Holly HubSpot.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Her persistence just to get the sales meeting was one thing, but then she showed up so incredibly prepared, like with a detailed presentation on a specific solution, HubSpot, that she actually convinced the author to adopt right then and there. That's preparedness paying off big time.
Huge payoff. And the author's COO, the former junior Miss Green Bay, her preparation for her interview, practicing her flute solo, going over answers with her dad, it gave her the confidence and poise to handle even unexpected questions really gracefully.
Okay, so how do we actually cultivate this? It's got to be more than just like cramming the night before an interview, right?
Oh, much more. It's about doing your homework thoroughly, really understanding the context, the audience, the subject matter inside and out.
And practicing opposition research.
Yeah, but constructively. Not in a negative way. Just understanding potential challenges or disagreements with your ideas and thinking through how you'd address them respectfully, like practicing poking holes in your own plans to see where they might be weak.
That's smart, being your own toughest critic.
Exactly. And being really intentional in your planning. Rebecca M. suggests breaking goals down into exact steps, set deadlines. And crucially, the sources suggest aiming to meet them early. Diane V. found that helps her sleep better.
I bet. And following that timeless advice, plan your work, work your plan, using weekly or monthly structures maybe, and actually reporting on your progress, even just to yourself.
Yeah. The bottom line here is that preparation isn't just about being ready for a test. It's a direct path to confidence, efficiency, and showing respect for the opportunity and everyone involved. It really, truly pays dividends.
Okay, finally, we get to a trait that the sources argue is maybe profoundly underrated in its actual impact. The likable.
Well, likable.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the people who just genuinely play well with others. They build positive relationships. They build up that relational equity.
Now, the claim from the sources here is pretty gold. They say, in real life, likability trumps competency almost every time in hiring decisions. That feels kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it, in our performance-obsessed world?
It really does, but the data seems to back it up. While logically you might say, of course I'd hire the absolute top expert.
Right.
In practice, hiring managers are human beings. They end up hiring people they connect with, people they actually like having around. It's that classic brilliant jerk problem.
Oh, yeah. The person is technically amazing, but impossible to work with.
Exactly. Their lack of likability becomes a liability for the whole team's cohesion and morale, no matter how smart they are.
And being likable, it builds up like a goodwill bank.
That's a great way to put it. When you inevitably mess up, having that relational capital means people are way more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt, extend some grace, give you a second chance.
Instead of just writing you off immediately.
Exactly. It's really the foundation of relational equity and just having a positive reputation overall. It makes teams work better.
Yeah.
And Christopher J. from Military and Law Enforcement, he noted that being liked and trusted can actually help you navigate dangerous situations more safely. People are more willing to cooperate or help you out.
Wow. Now, the forces are really careful, though, to distinguish this from just being a people pleaser.
Oh, crucially important distinction. Yes. People-pleasing usually comes from fear or insecurity, right? Trying to morph into what you think other people want you to be. True likability, in the way these sources talk about it, comes from confidence and genuine engagement. It's also not about being popular, which research often links to dominance or aggression. Likability is more tied to emotional adjustment, being a unifying force.
Okay, so Jamie Kernelima comes up again here.
She does. And beyond her authenticity, her general likability, from her early days in pageants and TV, right through to connecting with that QVC audience, it was absolutely key to her success. Her vulnerability landed so well because she was already likable. People felt connected to her.
And that hypothetical versus real hiring choice they mentioned.
Yeah, perfectly illustrates it. Most people say they'd hire the expert, but do they? And Dale Carnegie's famous point about remembering names being the sweetest and most important sound.
Simple but powerful.
Totally. Larry, the guy who makes a point of remembering servers' names, that simple act shows respect and care, builds instant connection.
And the Atticus Finch example. Knowing when not to talk, to save someone else's pride, that builds huge respect and likability too. Sometimes silence is the most likable response.
So true. Or that wild story about the Vanderbloemen likability baptism by party.
Right. Yeah. Inviting the candidate to the Christmas party.
And she was just naturally the life of it, connected with everyone, and boom, that sealed the deal. It showed she'd fit in.
Okay, so how do we cultivate this? If maybe playing well with others doesn't feel like your strongest suit naturally.
Well, a really core piece of advice from the sources is pretty simple. Stop talking so much and listen more. Like, genuinely listen.
Okay. Less talking, more listening.
Remember names and maybe just a few small details about people. Gina B. says that simple act tells people, hey, you matter to me. It builds loyalty.
Practice knowing when not to talk, too. When chiming in isn't needed or might just stir things up unnecessarily.
Yeah, read the room and just generally try to be personable, uplifting, encouraging. Kyle H. learned how powerful just smiling, laughing, making appropriate jokes can be, especially in tough environments. That positive energy is contagious.
Take a genuine interest in other people, too.
Definitely. Ask about their families, their hobbies, their dreams. Even ask, how can I help you get a win today? It shifts the focus off yourself.
And what if you're an introvert? Does that mean you're doomed in the likability department?
Yeah. Not at all. The sources offer specific reassurance here. You don't have to be the loudest extrovert. Joshua Kay and others found that connecting through writing thoughtful cards, texts, even positive social media interactions can be just as effective for building likability.
So find your own authentic way to connect.
Exactly. The final tip they offer is basically be yourself, but maybe a little bit better. It's not about faking it or looking desperate. It's about making small, intentional choices to express the best version of your genuine self.
Okay, so the key takeaways for the likable seem really clear. Listening often gets you further than talking. Treat everyone with respect, top to bottom. And understand that building that relational equity through genuine likability, it's really foundational for long-term success and your overall reputation.
So yeah, there you have it. A deep dive into just some of these data-backed habits that really seem to differentiate these unicorns being fast, authentic, agile, solver, prepared, and likable.
And I think what these sources show again and again is that these aren't some kind of magical innate talents that only a few lucky people are born with.
Not at all.
They're teachable. They're cultivable habits.
Yeah.
Skills you can actually hone with practice and being intentional about it, just like any other skill you want to learn.
And in this world where, let's face it, machines are taking over more and more of the predictable stuff, focusing on these uniquely human skills, our ability to connect, to adapt, to solve problems creatively, to build trust. And it's not just about, personal growth. It's really how we redefine our value, how we stand out, how we become that unusually successful, truly irreplaceable person.
It really is about leaning into what makes us uniquely human. So maybe to leave you with a thought from this deep dive. Thinking about those traits we discussed. Fast, authentic, agile, solver, prepared, likable. Which one feels like it comes most naturally to you? And maybe more importantly, which one feels like your biggest opportunity for growth right now? What's maybe one small, concrete step you could take this week to actively start cultivating the trait you want to build on?